This original WSRE presentation is made possible by viewers like you. Thank you.
Nuclear energy and the state of the Florida economy. Gulf Power executive Bentina Terry on this edition of Conversations. Thanks for joining us. I'm Jeff Weeks. Bentina Terry is a vice president with Gulf Power Company. Her duties include managing the company's relationships as they pertain to regulation, governmental affairs, economic development, and the environment. Recently, she was charged with handling the company's nuclear initiatives as well. She also speaks on economic development on behalf of the Florida Chamber of Commerce Foundation. By training, she's an attorney with a Juris Doctorate from the University of Michigan Law School. Her ascension up the corporate ladder has included stops at Troutman Sanders Law Firm, Progress Energy, Southern Nuclear Operating Company, and Georgia Power. Welcome, Bentina Terry. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
We mentioned Georgia Power there. I want to start off here talking a little bit about what's going on in the world of energy as far as nuclear energy is concerned. And I know recently, I guess your sister company, Georgia Power, was or is involved in building, I guess, the first nuclear power plant in what, more than 30 years?
Yes, at our Plant Vogtle site, which is right outside of Waynesboro, Georgia. It'll be 2 AP1000 units, which are the Westinghouse nuclear units. We've gotten lots of support from the federal government. There are loan guarantees that we have that the DOE has awarded Georgia Power. And it's amazing to go out there. The construction to build a nuclear power plant, it's on a scale that you just couldn't imagine.
Yeah, because you have gotten support both from the current administration as well as the Department of Energy. Was that a surprise? Because nuclear seems like it's been on the back burner for so long. Were you surprised that politically it was accepted?
No, we actually started seeing support for nuclear energy about 4 or 5 years ago. Actually longer than that, maybe 5 or 6. When I first came to Southern Nuclear, the job I was at before, I came to Gulf Power as their general counsel. That's the first project I started working on. There had been a number of changes in the interim with how nuclear plants are licensed, which was a problem in the past. There have been changes with the actual technology. This is a completely new technology for nuclear power. And there was more of a willingness and a recognition that we had let nuclear power kind of slip to the back burner and we ought to pull it forward. Many other countries had proceeded very well with nuclear power with no accidents or incidents or problems. And so we knew that there was growing support. We started polling people, and people were more and more interested in nuclear power as a safe, clean, reliable way to produce electricity. So we were pretty sure that it would eventually come back into the forefront of people's minds.
Has the pushback primarily been because of safety issues? Is that what people have been afraid of?
Yeah, that's part of the pushback. There are kind of two components people normally have some issues with. First is safety, but I can tell you that we haven't had a major nuclear accident in the United States in a long time. And people quote 3 Mile Island as an accident, but there was actually no release of radioactive materials during 3 Mile Island. Right. In terms of what happened at Chernobyl, the Russians had a completely different model for safety. They had no containment building around their reactor. In other words, around a nuclear reactor, there is a very, very thick wall that prevents that nuclear radiation, should there be a problem, from leaking to the public. The Russians didn't build those. Okay. And they used, there was a whole lot of other things with their technology that we don't have. And quite honestly, the Russians didn't quite regulate their businesses the way we regulate ours here in the United States. The other component that people sometimes get a little concerned about is the nuclear byproduct that's produced once you produce electricity. We are one of the few countries, however, that doesn't do reprocessing, where we essentially is recycling that byproduct because there's still lots of useful life left in it. And so if you recycle that or reprocess that, you can reuse that materials. But people get really concerned with, well, what do you do with it? And many people think, well, that's how you can build a nuclear bomb. Well, you're not building a nuclear bomb with this material. First of all, it's much smaller amounts of radioactivity than you find in a nuclear bomb. But secondly, you have to be pretty sophisticated to be able to get to it, to be able to even utilize it.
It's not something some guy in his garage is going to do, in other words.
No, and I always laugh. We keep at the nuclear plants, we keep it in a spent fuel pool is what it's called. But you've got to make it through the front gate that's armed. Then you've got to make it past the stations of armed guards who are above you. Then you've got to make it into the building. past an armed guard and through a security system. And then you've got to make it onto the floor where it is, past more guards. And then you've got to get into a pool of water that is extremely deep to grab it. And then you've got to get it back out in a lead box. So it's not going to happen. So.
What will more nuclear power plants do for the energy landscape in the U.S.?
Well, it's another clean, reliable source of energy, and it's what we call base load electricity. It's that electricity or power that is on 24/7, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. You can count on it, you can rely on it. Its efficiency rating, how often it's on, is about 97, 98%, so it's extremely reliable. What that allows us to do, though, is to explore other forms of electricity that are interesting and good for us to have, but right now don't really have that type of reliability. At Gulf Power and Southern Company, we are very big advocates of renewable power. We just want to make sure that we recognize the current limitations of it. Right. I'll give you some examples.
Please do.
We have a lot of hydro electricity within Southern Company, and we love it. It is the cheapest way to produce electricity that we currently have in our portfolio. A couple of years ago, when there was a drought, however, we couldn't use our hydropower. Right. And with renewables, you may wake up one day and find out that your energy source is not going to be there within the next hour or within the next week. When you're talking about nuclear power, if we're going to run out of uranium, we're going to know well in advance. Right. And so while renewables are a great way to produce electricity, they just don't have the same type of reliability because it's not a power source that you can contain yourself and then release in order to produce electricity.
What about biomass? I've been hearing some talk about that in recent years.
Biomass is a good source of producing electricity as well. There are a lot of misconceptions about what we mean by biomass. Some people think it means that we're going to go out here and clear cut forests in order to make electricity. And the true intention of biomass actually is to use what's left over from the growing process or from the paper processes in order to produce electricity. So you want to use that part of the feedstock that is not otherwise going to be used. Or you want to grow a tree that's specifically going to be used for that particular purpose, but it's got to have a very short growth cycle in order for you to be able to do that. But it's a good way of producing electricity. It is very low cost. There are other things too, landfill methane and municipal solid waste. That there are good ways to produce electricity. Gulf Power actually has Perdido landfill. We have a landfill methane facility there. It's about 3.2 megawatts. So there's ways to get electricity from a lot of other sources. We just need to do more research to find out more of them.
That's something that's been talked about here recently, is the whole landfill methane. We recently did a show on sustainability, and I know we talked about one of the companies who was really utilizing that. How does that work?
You actually, if you've been past a landfill, you'll notice they're just venting the methane and burning it. And what you do with a landfill methane generating facility is all we do to produce electricity is create heat. And that heat turns turbines, makes steam that turns turbines that produces electricity. So that just becomes our heat source. We take that methane, we burn it, it boils water, produces steam, it produces electricity. And if you look at the spectrum of greenhouse gases, methane actually is one of the more I don't want to call it potent, but it is one of the more dangerous and more readily available greenhouse gases. So it takes something that has, by venting it, you're just burning it or you're just sending it into the atmosphere and you're producing electricity from it. That really is sustainability. Yeah.
You know, one of the things that we hear an awful lot of talk about from a political standpoint is a national energy policy. And it really doesn't seem to matter if the Republicans are in office or the Democrats in office. We haven't really been able to get our arms wrapped around an energy policy. Why is that?
That has a lot to do with the United States and the way we're set up. And we are a capitalistic society. We believe in businesses and entrepreneurship and free enterprise. We also have an energy system that has a diversity of companies. About 15 years ago, all the utilities just about were what we call vertically integrated utilities, like Southern Company and Gulf Power still are, which meant you owned everything from the wires that came to the people's houses to the generating plant, and then you billed them for those services or so the electricity that was produced. About 10 years ago, we went through a process of deregulating some of those. So in some jurisdictions, some states, you'll find that there's a wires company that just gets the electricity to your house, and there's a generating company that just generates it. What that did was create a very, very diverse energy community. And those energy communities, some of them are like we are, heavily regulated. Some of them are regulated a little less. But all of us are corporations that sell stock on the New York Stock Exchange. Well, most of us. There's some munis and co-ops. What that means, though, is when you go to Washington and you try to set a national energy policy, you're trying to figure out how to set it for all these divergent interests that show up. The energy companies, the renewable lobby, the land use people. You'd be amazed at the number of people that are interested in the energy issue. If you live in China, China decides what the energy policy is. They run the utility, and they're not trying to foster more entrepreneurship in that area on that many levels. And so it's easy for them. Right. The other thing is just the messiness of democracy. You know, I tell you, I deal with politicians all the time. I go to the Florida legislature, and that process, it is like the you know, proverbial making sausage thing. Yeah. But we all love it when we eat that sausage. Right. And so it's a messy process. It comes out with good results. It just can take a long time. But I know we'd much rather have that than somebody just deciding that for us. And that's what happens in other countries. Well,
that brings me back. Do we really need a national energy policy, or do we just need to let the marketplace do its thing?
It depends on what your objectives are. I'll tell you this. The reason why Southern Company has hydroelectricity is because it's cheap. If you want to require utilities to use other forms of renewable energy right now, they're not as economical as coal or gas or nuclear. And if that is the will of the people, that we have more renewables, then what you have to do is override what the market will have happen quicker than the market will get you there. Some people will tell you over time, the market will eventually get you there. Right. If you're really putting money into the front end of the process with renewables and research and development, you can help bring down those costs and make it more competitive. But if the desire is to have those things in the marketplace now, regardless of their cost, you've got to have energy policy in order to make that happen. The problem, of course, with that is that you are changing market dynamics. And so one of the things that we struggle with and really look at and try to make sure is that we're charging the lowest cost to the customer. And so if we're forced to use a higher cost resource, that means the cost to the customer goes up. If as the customers, who are also the taxpayers, say, I'm okay with that, I want to pay more for electricity because I'd rather have renewable electricity, then that's a public policy matter. Right. And that's something that legislators would have to say, okay, we're going to increase the cost of electricity because it's important for us to have renewables. There are a lot of repercussions to doing that, though, and do a lot of economic development work. And I talk to a lot of customers, and the cost of producing electricity is the highest cost that lots of businesses have. And if you pulled out your own personal budget at home, your electricity costs are a pretty good stake of what you pay for. Right. And the lower your income, the higher percentage of your money goes to electricity and other necessities. And so by increasing those electricity costs, there are a lot of people who may have some financial damage as a result of that. So what we really advocate is, let's put more money into research and development. Let's try to get the cost of these renewables to be competitive, and let's not try to trick the marketplace into something that could have some repercussions we might not like.
Would the government fare better to be maybe more supportive of that research and development and not try to force something immediately? Because it seems like sometimes that it becomes a real political issue more so. And I mean, I guess, is the government too involved in it's the question at this stage?
Well, you know, the government does what people want. And some people want us to be have more renewables. And I don't envy politicians trying to make these decisions at all. I mean, as I'm walking out of their office talking about the cost to my business and my customers of renewables, there's somebody else from the renewable lobby walking into their office talking about how we need to do more for renewables. And they've got to figure out how to make that balance work. And that's why we send them to Tallahassee and to Washington and all other state capitals across the country. I think that if they want a specific result, they have to put their hands in it. If you want to let the market work, then they don't have to put their hands in it. What is good for everybody, though, is more R&D for renewables, because that gets us to a place where we can continue to develop those technologies and make them the best that they can be. To me, that's the best place to make the investment.
Speaking of technology, we hear some talk about this smart grid and how it's supposed to increase efficiency. What is a smart grid?
You know, if you ask people, you get like a million different answers to it. So I'll give you what we talk about when we talk about smart grid. We talk about making the communication between the system and us more real time. So you've had outages at your house, unfortunately, I'm sure. We don't know you're out till you call us most of the time. And with a smart grid system, with a smart meter on your home, it actually calls us and say, hey, Jeff Weeks is out of power. You need to figure out what's wrong. Right. The good thing is that the more devices along the line tell us, then we can figure out where we need to go to pinpoint the power. If it's just you that's out, it's probably at your house. Right. If it's your whole neighborhood, it may be at the transformer that's at the entrance of your subdivision. If it's a whole area of the city, it may be over at the substation. And so, and there are a lot of devices that we have as well that we can't operate from our control room. We have to send a crew out to manually cut on or cut off the power or redirect the power. And so what a smart grid allows us to do is to do some of that work remotely so that we don't have to send out a crew.
I heard an analyst, an independent analyst, energy analyst, say that the smart grid in the future would be, as far as having an impact, the equivalent of what the internet has had.
It could
be.
From
an impact standpoint.
It could be. It'll certainly change the way you understand and use energy if you as a consumer learn more about your consumption. And that's the hardest thing for us, is trying to help customers understand how their consumption works, how they can better use it, and how we can assist them through that process. But all utilities want to help you be a smarter customer. Right. It's just that we don't always have the tools right now to be able to do that. So if we can actually do that and give you more control, and you want control, because some customers don't want control, then you can be more efficient in your use, and that will make our system overall more efficient.
One of the things I think we're going to see happen in 2011 is, I know, for example, Chevrolet is coming out with the Chevy Volt, and I believe Nissan has the Leaf, if I'm not mistaken, and I think there's some companies in China developing some electric cars. Your thoughts on that? Is that going to be viable in the relatively near future?
It will be. You know, it's interesting. When I first started working in the utility industry, we had these little bitty cars, and I started at Georgia Power, and they would let you take the car to lunch. But you could only take it 10, 20, 30 miles, then you had to bring it back. The only place you could charge it was at the Georgia Power headquarters. I mean, it was fun, but it wasn't very useful as an individual to have. Well, now they make the cars so that you can charge them at your home. You can either get a charging station at your home, or a lot of them are now made so that you can use them with a traditional outlet, which is phenomenal. I drove a Tesla the other day, and that is an electric sports car. It was a phenomenal experience. I mean, it goes from 0 to 60 in no time flat, and it's a wonderful, and it's noiseless. I mean, the electric vehicles are kind of eerie because there's no exhaust, there's no fan, there's no engine, and so it's a quiet ride. But they're there. They're on the horizon. We've gotten a lot further with the battery technology, so you can get much further on an electric vehicle than you could previously. We still are going to have to figure out how we can make it so that you can go even further, so you can charge at home, or whether or not we're going to have places where you can charge away from home.
I believe that I had read, and I could be mistaken on this, but I believe I had read that the Leaf, I think it's what it's called from Nissan, will do maybe 100 miles?
Yeah,
it will. Is that correct?
That's pretty good, yeah.
And yeah, that's not bad. I mean, that's quite a few, in a smaller market, that's quite a few trips back and forth to work.
That's good. It's pretty good. And the other thing is that we're hoping to, hybrids are good to kind of bridge that gap until we get to complete electric, because it allows you to use electric when you can, and then go over and use gas whenever you really need that and to recharge the battery. The other thing we're trying to figure out is whether or not, when that electric vehicle is at your home as a storage technology, can you use it in your home? So once you bring it home and you park it and it's fully charged and it's got some excess charge on it, can you use it to run things in your home at night? Can you truly use the battery in your car as a storage battery for your home when the car is there? And we're just still trying to do the research on that. But there are a lot of people out there thinking that there's a way to make that union between your house and your car and your electricity usage good. So
that's interesting,
yeah.
I'd never even thought about that. Well, that's really leveraging up your technology at that stage in the game. Let me talk for a second. A lot of people say the best way to transition from traditional gasoline or oil is just to incorporate more natural gas type vehicles. And I know you guys use that in power generation as well. Your thoughts on that? Is that viable?
Natural gas is a bridge fuel. That's what we tell people all the time. Until you, if we're going to stop using coal, which it appears that we're there. If we're going to stop using coal in order to produce electricity, we're going to have to use natural gas as a bridge technology. And it is a good way to run a vehicle, even though electric vehicles are a little bit more efficient. So it is a good bridge technology. The thing that we are most concerned with natural gas is natural gas prices are so volatile. When we look at building new generation, for instance, we consider the life cycle cost of that particular form of generation. When you look at a nuclear plant, it's a huge capital investment up front, but the cost of fuel is stable long term. When you look at a natural gas plant, the cost of building that plant is small, but natural gas prices are volatile.
Right.
So you kind of have to have a mix so you can try to even out that cost to the customer.
Speaking of volatility, our economy has been rather volatile, to say the least, over the past couple of years. And I know you speak a fair amount on economic development and what's going on in the economy, particularly in the state of Florida. How is the state of Florida right now?
We're better than we thought we were going to be right now, but we've slowed and moved backwards, of course. We've lost, for the first time, Florida had a net migration of folks. That's very, very unusual for us. And it's a lot of those people that we call halfbacks. You know, they came from New York and then they went halfway back to North Carolina, to Georgia, Tennessee, places like that. It'll be another 10 years before we get to the same employment rate that we were at Florida. But we're moving forward, and we're moving forward a little faster than the original predictions were. But it's going to take a while to get this economy back on track.
What do we need to do to stimulate the economy, not just in the state of Florida, but overall? What, if you could wave a magic wand, what would you think would be the quickest action, so to speak? You
know, one of the things we really need to do is, it's a little difficult in Florida to establish a new business. We've got some of the most costly business costs, you know, to set up a business, and some of the most complicated. And so we were at one time the 5th cheapest state to be in, and now we're the 19th most expensive. And when you want to talk about revitalizing your economy, you want to talk about bringing in new businesses and helping businesses that are here grow. But if those businesses are going to have obstacles, everything is small from getting a permit to getting their business license, that mean that going to Alabama or Georgia or someplace else in the world is going to be an easier, quicker, less expensive process, then we really are putting obstacles in their way. That means we won't grow as fast as we can.
I'm curious, there's a lot of talk, and it kind of becomes a political football back and forth about where we as a country are shipping jobs overseas and whatnot. We are, obviously, and there's a reason, because it's cheaper and whatnot. But a lot of folks will argue that what we have to do as a society, and I'm curious your thoughts on this because you're in a highly technical world, is we have to start training our employees differently. Expand on that thought.
You know, it was interesting. I was at a Gulf Power Symposium just a couple of weeks ago, and we had a speaker that came in, and he said every day his nephew in the morning time plays on his Xbox. And he wears his little headphones and he talks to kids all over the world, and they have this completely interactive kind of thing that they do to do all these games. They plan strategy, he studies before he plays these games. And he disconnects from that system and he goes to school and he goes back in time. And then as an employer, we do the same thing to them when they get to work. They're highly educated, they're energetic, they're used to tweeting and using all these devices and technology, and then they come into our workplaces and they go back in time. And what we've got to find a way to do is to bridge that, make it so that our workplaces at least take the advantages of technology and translate them into our workplaces. That will require a large amount of training for those people who are in our workforce, as well as making sure those people who are coming into our workforce are educated and understand and are able to learn and grow, be strategic and all that kind of stuff. So it's really, to me, both educating the people that come into our workforce and then really educating the people who are in our workforce and transforming our current workforce.
Should we have the approach of just some of those jobs, particularly manufacturing type jobs, they're gone for good, let's quit crying over it and be more aggressive about the new stuff? Should that be our mentality?
Well, I think we have to to have a variety. I mean, I always think that diversity is probably very good. And I do think that for some people, manufacturing and manufacturing jobs are the right jobs for them. And so I don't want us to ever get to a place where we think stuff's too good for Americans.
Right.
I worry sometimes that when you have a kid who's good with his hands and he really wants to do something like that what we tell him is, well, you need to go to college. Well, maybe not. Maybe he's going to be dissatisfied. Maybe he needs a job where he gets to work with his hands. Now, we can train him. Maybe he does need to go to a community college. Maybe he does need to get some other types of training, and maybe we can make him the best at that as he can be. But I do think we have a little danger if we ever say to ourselves that certain jobs are just not good enough for us.
Which brings me to the next question is, do we need, from an education standpoint, need to start focusing more on technical-oriented jobs, engineering specifically, and that type of things?
We need the STEM technology, science, technology, engineering, and math. We really need to encourage our children to go into those particular fields. It's interesting. I have a niece who's getting ready to graduate from high school, and she was my only niece for a long time, so we're very close. And she says, she calls me Aunt Ben. Aunt Ben, I want to be like you. I want to be a lawyer. I said, why do you want to be a lawyer? Because I think it's neat, and because that's what her aunt does. And I said, well, why don't you want to be an engineer like your dad? She's like, oh, that's not really interesting. And I said, you know what? I don't create anything. I write briefs and I go and talk to people, and but I'm not the future of this country. You need lawyers for sure. But the reality is things are created and made better by people who are in science, technology, engineering, and math. And if you can be a part of that future, a part of creating those things that we don't even know exist right now, then that's a wonderful way to contribute to society. And so don't write it off. And she's reconsidering whether or not she wants to go into medicine, because she's not quite an engineering person. But I think that that's important for us to help our kids understand that those fields aren't about doing little equations and figuring out what happens in chemistry. It's really about creation. It's really about the future, and it's really about taking us to things and creating things that I didn't know I wanted an iPhone, needed an iPhone, until somebody gave me one, and now I can't live without the thing. So,
that's right.
I mean, that's what we really need kids to be focusing on.
That's great. I'm getting short on time here, but I think it's kind of interesting, the company you work for, Gulf Power. You're a high-ranking executive, the CEO, Susan Story. Both of you are female and non-traditional, or I guess typically speaking, that would be more of a male-dominated type business. What's the secret?
Oh, I just work really hard and be myself, and I think that's what I tell. I love what I do. I have a real passion for it, and I consider myself fortunate that Gulf Power actually pays me to do it. But that's what I tell people. Figure out what you love and do that. Enjoy it, and good things will come.
Bentina Terry, it's been a real pleasure.
Thank you.
It's been enlightening. We learned a lot about energy. Thank you very much, Bentina Terry. She's an executive of the Gulf Power Company. By the way, you can check out some of our recent guests online. All you have to do is go to WSRE.org/conversations and click on the Episodes tab. We're also on Facebook. You can find us. Just search out Conversations with Jeff Weeks. Thank you so very much for spending some time with us. I'm Jeff Weeks. Take very good care of yourself, and we'll see you soon.